Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and I don't actually have a bot in my hands today because we're going to take part in Masterfar's Holy Grail Transformers Toy Challenge in the latest GotBot True review. Hey all, I hope you're having a fantastic day, week, month, and year. I am your humble host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. Please like, comment, share, and of course subscribe. And hey, while you're at it, that's right, hit the notification bell. It lets you know when I have new content going up, whether it be reviews, or live streams, or stop motions, or anything else that we do for fun here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, the Everything Factor, Transformers, Collectors, NL, and have a look for me everywhere. Especially now in the live streams happening Thursday, late afternoon, early evening, depending on the time zone that you live in. So, this is the Holy Grail Challenge, and this is a really hard one. I get a kick out of challenges sometimes, and I take part in some, and I don't take part in others, but I wanted to take part in this one because it was so difficult to do, largely because my Holy Grail in my collection has kept changing over time. So the way I think I'm going to do it is sort of as a top 10, kind of. I'm going to talk about the kind of 10 Holy Grails and sort of the story behind how I got them. And then from those 10, I'm going to pick out the one that kind of stands head and shoulders above them as the absolute grail of my grails. So without any further ado, let's head over to the table and get this thing started. And so since my Holy Grail has changed over time, I figured why not begin with the first figure that was a Holy Grail of mine. Like I said, I'm going to go kind of from 10 to 1, and then I will pick kind of the grail of all grails, so to speak. And the very first one I had was, believe it or not, Deluxe Class Fall of Cybertron Generations Skywarp. Now mine has some custom paint apps on him, but overall this guy was not abundant here for a long time. In fact, between him first appearing in retail here in North America, both in the US and across the rest of Canada, to get to my particular neck of the woods, it took 9 months. That's right, 9 months. And when he showed up at Target, which we no longer have in Canada. I don't know when I would have got him otherwise. I believe that other retail locations were about 2 more months after that before he showed up there. It was a crazy delay, enough that I figured we're not getting this wave. Now, I reviewed this guy in episode 111 a long time ago, and surprisingly, he is the kind of worst video on my channel. Like, he does the worst. He has the least views of any video that I've ever done. I don't know. Nobody cares about Skywarp, but for me, he was Holy Grail number 10. Number 9 brings us to this trio. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, that trio is a Holy Grail? First, they're a kind of Japanese-only trio. Secondly, only one of them came out at regular retail. Thirdly, we got a version of Repugnus that was really kind of terrible, and I didn't like it. It did not fill the need as a Titan Master, though I did use the Titan Master here because the head that came with my Repugnus was not put together correctly, so I was glad to actually have this Titan Master then. I never would have thought that in the modern age of all the trios that we would get, that we would actually get a trio of the Monster Bots, and they're just fun, quirky, and weird. Of the trio, however, my absolute favorite, and the one that really makes this trio a grail, is Grotesque. I looked at Twinferno, or Double Cross if you will, in episode 224 a long time ago. I looked at the I guess special edition Repugnus in episode 449 a little while ago, and I looked at Grotesque in episode 329. I feel like that in the kind of time since his release, that Grotesque has become increasingly more challenging to find, so I'm glad I kind of jumped on him when I did. By the way, when we go through all 10 of these, I'm going to give a few kind of shout outs to like a couple of honorable mentions that really deserve to be here as well. But in the meantime, moving on to number 8, and here we have Punch, Counterpunch from Power of the Primes. Now, why is this a holy grail? Well, in the modern era, we only really had 2 updates, and both of those were exclusives. I want to say one was a BotCon exclusive using the classic Sunstreaker Sideswipe mold. Might have been BotCon, I'm not sure. And the other, I think, was through the Collector Club, and it was really only Counterpunch, and it was using the like Wheeljack Combiner Wars mold. So I wanted the character, but the only one that I wanted was the, I'm saying BotCon exclusive. I can't verify if that's what it was. You guys know what one I'm talking about. But that was always kind of hyper expensive, and he had a tiny head. And then when this guy was announced, I was like, excellent, this is fantastic, awesome, yes, I'm very, very glad about this. And it wasn't as simple as one would think that it is. I looked at him initially in episode 463, but that wasn't the whole story because I was missing a tire. And I went through this whole long story about having to contact Amazon and Hasbro customer service, and I went through and explained an update in episode 464 where I managed to get a tire. That took us right up to episode 493 where I talked about what I got from Hasbro customer service like as an apology for his missing tire. And I guess technically 496 where I reviewed what was in that box, which was not a holy grail. But having this guy and having him complete fulfills a Grail character for me, an obscure character for me, with the aesthetic that I personally wanted. On to number 7. And at number 7 we have technically my entire Beast Wars collection, but most specifically the 10th anniversary Tarantulas, who is 100% complete, I will add. Now, why do I say the Beast Wars collection in its totality? Well, here's why. I only got into collecting Beast Wars last year, and as of this recording, last year was 2018. In fact, the summer of 2018. Up to that point, I had a couple of KOs, and that was about it. I had Rhinox from the Generations line, and I had Rat Trap from the Generations line. And that was really it. And then I went thrifting one day, and I happened to find a depth charge for $3. Canadian. All of these prices, by the way, are Canadian. Then the next day, I found a Rampage for $3. And I said, okay, I'm starting to get something now. I also had Generations Waspinator. So I had, 2 Predacons, and I had now, including, my KOs and the couple of Generations figures, I had probably 3 or 4 Maximals. I was after getting for Christmas that year the entire Beast Wars series, and I was watching the whole series, so I was really in a Beast Wars mode, and I kind of said, you know what, I want to go back and I want to find these figures. Then I discovered that some of them are really expensive, and some of them not so much. Like, it was relatively easy to get an original Cheetor. It was relatively easy to get a Classics Dinobot, though I did paint him to look more like the Henkei one. The Predacons were a lot more challenging to get. Generally, I found prices, including shipping, of about $100 for Scorponok. I didn't spend that, but about that for Scorponok. I've looked at all of these characters kind of on the channel now, with like within the last year or so. A lot of them had custom work, but the 2 most difficult ones to find were the little, I guess, scout class, I'll call it, about the size of a traditional, like, Power of the Primes Combiner Wars Legends class, Pterosaur, who I totally painted up. I love the character, I love the figure, but it's hard to find and usually pretty expensive, a good 50, 60 bucks. And this guy. Now, there's lots of Tarantuluses out there. Lots of the original release and lots of the Transmetal Tarantulas, but not a lot of the, what I will call, properly animation accurately colored 10th anniversary version. As a matter of fact, I came across one and I passed on it at the time. It was a decent price, but it wasn't complete. It didn't have his blaster. That's the only thing it didn't have. And even that was going, I think, at the time for about $45. I happened to find this guy shipping in for $40 Canadian. It was pure luck, and it was 100% complete, and he was the last Predacon I needed to have my on-screen Predacons. Although, to be fair, I did not get the Tripredacus Council, at least not yet, and I did not get the Dinobot clone, Dinobot 2. Maybe one day, we'll see. I don't feel quite as compelled to have them, but to have the version of Tarantulas I wanted, this guy is definitely one of my grails. On to number 6. And number 6 brings me to the Chaos Bringer himself. I figured that I had missed out on this guy. I remember seeing him on toy shelves, but I wasn't into collecting at the time. And when I got back into collecting, there wasn't really a version of this guy around. And then they announced, I think, like a 25th anniversary version or something that was coming out. And it was really expensive. Really expensive. Too expensive for me. 160 bucks or something. It was crazy. And at this point, I only started to be introduced to like online sites and like making online purchases by, at the time, Starscream Girlfriend. Yes, at the time, Starscream Girlfriend. And she managed to find this guy and sort of source this guy for me for, get this, $67 Canadian, shipping included. It went to her address at the time, but the box arrived and it was in rough shape, man. Rough shape. But the figure was in great shape, and he even came with 3 or 4 like extra mini cons thrown in with him just as a bonus. And this, to this day, stands in as my version of the Chaos Bringer. It is the first kind of major figure that Starscream Girlfriend, who just very recently became Starscream Wife, kind of sourced for me. But it's not the only holy grail on this list that she sourced for me. Let's get to that halfway mark. And the halfway mark brings us to Cybertron itself. That's right, Primus. And Primus most recently came out in a recolor during the Last Night line for, again, I want to say $169 US. It was expensive. There's also the beautifully colored Takara version that I've seen go for about $300. I even see this version go for a respectable price if it's complete. That's step 1, if it's complete. And if it has the feet flaps, which it's often missing. Now mine is complete, though I don't have the Omega lock up here. I do have it. And he does have his feet flaps. He has everything. He's complete. And again, Starscream Wife sourced this guy a few years ago for my birthday for $50 Canadian. And I don't regret it for a second. Every collector deserves to have Cybertron in their collection. And while a lot of people might argue, hey, he should be bigger, you're never going to scale a planet, so work with what you get. And honestly, for a big orb on my shelf, this works just fine. And number 4 is another example of a figure that was sourced by Starscream Wife. Long time ago when she was still Starscream Girlfriend, but nevertheless, she's the one who kind of found this guy for me. Now, I always wanted to have a version of Vector Prime, and I know that this guy's not animation accurate, but I love the look of these colors. I like the fact that he doesn't have a translucent sword. He's the only version that came with a painted sword. I didn't want all those lights and sounds gimmicks. He still has Safeguard. This guy's 100% complete, and apparently he is like a rare variant that came out in small quantities. So I consider myself lucky not only to have him, but lucky to have him for what was really a reasonable price, to be perfectly honest with you, especially since I have been working hard at sort of over time trying to amass my iteration of the 13. And at number 3 is the amalgamation of a lot of work and a lot of searching. And it, of course, is my iteration of God Ginrai, or God Ginrai, depending on how you care to pronounce it. And I did not anticipate getting this guy at all. I mean, when I saw the Titans Return Power Master Optimus Prime come out and then get remolded in Japan, I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to put up with the North American release because I'm never going to be able to get that Japanese one. It's too expensive for my blood. I just can't do it. And then when they came out with God Bomber, I was like, I can't afford this. In Canadian dollars, we were tipping the scale at about $300 for that. For technically like a leader class figure, no, it's too much. It was too much for me. And then we got word that we were getting the Japanese use of the mold in a box set, an expensive box set, but a box set. And I ended up splitting the box set with a friend of mine, and I took all the figures in it except for Magnus Prime, or the North American release of Ginrai. Later on, the box set came up again at a severely reduced amount, and the suggestion was made to me by this same friend that we go in on a second box set this time. He would take the other 4 figures and I would take the remaining Magnus Prime. So we did that. Through the, ups and downs and ins and outs of everything, I actually ended up getting the Magnus Prime mold for a grand total of $27 Canadian. I could not pass that up. But I wasn't quite contented. Now, I looked at the full Siege on Cybertron box set in episode 304. Once I got the Magnus Prime, I started looking then for a version of, you guessed it, LG42. And I found that version of LG42 for, again, a decent price, basically the regular, like, Japanese retail price. So I said, you know what? It hasn't gone up yet in high cost. It's worth it to me. I'll get it. And I looked at the combined mode of both of them in episode 382. But my journey wasn't done yet. No. Because I still wanted to have the smaller cab robot and then the even smaller little engine robot. So I went looking for the ever-elusive Perfect Effect PC-16 Ginrai Prime. And I found him for, again, a respectable price. I want to say, I can't remember what it was now, but again, for the figure, for the shipping cost in, I want to say it was $60? $75? I don't remember, but it was respectable at a time when he was getting very, very, very hard to find. I don't even know now if he is kicking around. I haven't been looking in a long time, but I know he has become very elusive. I'll mention this here, I did recently pick up the KBB PC-17 KO, and I have that used with Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. I reviewed that not that long ago. Now, I reviewed the PC-16 in episode 456, and the KO very recently in episode 540. You can look at 540 and see how well the KO fares. I would suggest to you that it is very likely that we may get that KO repainted into the Ginrai Prime color. So maybe not all hope is lost. Now, I had Magnus Prime or Ginrai, or Super Ginrai, I guess. I had just regular cab robot Ginrai. I had LG42 and I had the complete God Ginrai, but I was missing one little thing. I was missing a proper little Power Master, Engine Block, God Master, whatever you want to call it, Ginrai. And of course we all know that that is the PC-15 set. Now, I did pay $48 Canadian for that set. It was the most expensive part of getting all of this guy in terms of what you actually get in package, because really you get a head and you get the little guy, and that's the bulk of it. Some thigh fillers, but like whatever. You know, that was overpriced, I admit. Now, I did, in total, spend somewhere in the vicinity of, I think, like $160, $180 to get this guy complete. But that includes both of those add-on kits. That includes, you know, the two like official figures. So, like, overall, I think that was pretty good. That being said, I looked at PC-15 in episode 506, so I had a range of building this guy over a couple of hundred reviews. It took looking almost daily for PC-15, PC-16, and LG-42 in the aftermarket. I mean, almost daily until I found the right deal, and it was not easy to do. That being said, even though there's still imperfections with this guy, and I'm not really particularly personally interested in getting PC-18, not to say I won't, but I'm not particularly interested in it, I have to say, for the presence he has to be one of my holy grails. Now we get to the top two. And I can say with full comfort that one of the top two has to be the Wei Jiang Ultima Guard. In an extremely long review, my longest review ever, I literally looked at absolutely everything to do with Ultima Guard. It's episode 409. In the description for that one, I have everything time-stamped. I do show toward the end a huge, like, ultimate base mode. This guy was sort of teased for a long time. And we saw a couple of pictures, and that was like it. And then we saw, you know, the Terminus Giganticus go up, and he was super duper hyper expensive. I mean, everybody knows what his US price is. Convert that to Canadian dollars. As far as I'm concerned, put him at a reach. He wasn't even in the running because he's just too expensive. Then we had DX9, who I think theirs is nice, but there was still something aesthetically off about it. Of course, we have the upcoming official one. I didn't want to wait that long, though I think that's a great one, and I do hope to compare it to this guy. But when this guy finally came out, I was able to get him for $293, delivered Canadian. Still very expensive, and I wasn't going to do it because he was out of the ballpark for me, but my mom, of all people, supporting my channel, supporting my collection, and just supporting me, said, you know what, get him. I want you to have something that you value, something that you appreciate, something that you're proud to look at for your 40th birthday. And I got this guy for my 40th birthday from my mom. He is, like, sentimentally speaking, he is one of, if not the absolute most important figure in my collection. I will never replace this guy. And you know what? He is, in and of himself, really a work of art. I mean, he comes with Doc. He has a great voice clip. He has light up features. He has a motorized tank. There's nothing that I dislike about this guy. If you can ever see your way clear to get him, I highly recommend it. Now on to number one of the top 10. It has got to be Metroplex. Generations Metroplex. You know, all of these are Holy Grail, and though I've counted down 10 to 1, like, there's no particular order that they've gone in. This guy in particular has a huge story associated with him because I didn't get him. I remember seeing him on the shelf. In fact, I remember seeing him at Toys R Us for 134 Canadian. When he first released, I saw 4 of him. They sold, and I never saw him again. Then I saw him at Costco for $89.99. And there was about 5 of them there. They sold, never saw him again. Again, remember, these are Canadian prices. I figured, well, that's it, done. And when I really got into collecting, I really wanted a Metroplex. But even then, he was starting to inch up in price. And I said, it'd be a dream to get that guy. Anyway, Starscream wife went on the hunt, and she found a local seller who was selling them for $100 Canadian. She knocked him down to $90 Canadian. I went that day with $90 and picked him up. In box no less. So I got him $90 in box in the aftermarket, $90 Canadian. Since that time, I have added, oh, and of course Scamper was with him, though I don't have Scamper right here, but Scamper is with him. Since that time, I added a second blaster that I found while thrifting for $3, so that's $93. Then I added turrets and manacle, found them, and had them shipped $48 Canadian. And finally, so if you're keeping track, we were at 193, add another 48. We're now at 141. Yeah, okay, 141. And now you can add in, most recently, the Siege 6-gun figure. That was another $40. So we're at 141, what, 181? $181 Canadian to have all of this. I could not be happier. Absolutely. Now, that being said, a Holy Grail is a very personal thing. It's going to be different for every collector. It depends on your collecting taste, and it depends on the experience that you've had in your journey of trying to find just the figure that you want for a representation of a character in your collection. And all of these have a story to them, just as I'm sure many of yours also have stories to them. The longer we're in this, I think the more kind of collector stories we amass. That being said, this is my 10. I'd love to know what yours is as well. Whether it's 10 that you consider to be a Grail or just one. But since a Grail really should be one that stands head and shoulders above the rest, who from these stands head and shoulders? Well, before I say that, I just want to give a couple of other shout outs to a couple of figures that really kind of deserve to be in here. Beast Wars Megatron is one example. Found him for $30 Canadian. And he tends to be more expensive, usually. Was very happy to get him. I never get tired of him. He's still, to this day, such a great, great figure. I also want to throw in there, believe it or not, the Unique Toys Warlord, their version of Predaking. That is the iteration of that character that I personally wanted. It was the right size, and I didn't have $500 to pay for him. Didn't think he was worth it. But you know what? I got him basically for the cost of a Combiner Wars Combiner, and I thought he was definitely worth that. Again, I understand why a lot of people would disagree with me there, but it was worth it to me. And one that I kind of watched for and wanted for a long, long time in the hopes that he would go down. Right now, who would, or what would I say is my Holy Grail? What am I really kind of hunting for now the most? Believe it or not, a couple of things that are probably going to be really hard to get. I would love to have the X2 Toys XT009 upgrade kit for my Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. Can't find that anywhere. And I would love to actually have MMC's Salvia Promenon or their Solus Prime, because I am actually trying my best to slowly amass my iteration of the 13. But for what I currently have in my collection, while all of these have a special place, my absolute Holy Grail has to be Metroplex, because he's been a work in progress. From me seeing him on the toy shelf and passing over him right up until now with the Siege toy line, where I most recently added 6-gun to him. He has to take the cake, because not only do I not get tired of him, not only is he a work in progress, but he is, of course, an official, I reiterate that 3 times, figure. He is actually a Transformer, not just like a version of a Transformer character. Close second to Metroplex, very close second, because of how personal it is to me, because of when I got it and how I got it, has to be Wei Jiang's Ultima Guard. But if you were to ask me, hands down, which one figure is my Holy Grail, it would have to be Generations Metroplex. So there you have it. Now you know kind of which ones have the most value to me, which ones I had to kind of hunt the hardest for. I have a bunch of Holy Grails, but the Grail of all Grails would have to be the character, the toy, the figure that I never get tired of looking at. The one that I was a couple of years late in getting, but still managed to obtain. And the one that I've built onto over the years. Gotta be Generations Metroplex. I'd love to know what your Holy Grail is for your toy collection. It's different for everyone. We all know that, man. We all have different collecting tastes, and that's cool too. Anyway, thanks for dropping by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I know how important it is to you. Please, once again, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to come by for a live visit and check me out Thursday, late afternoon, evening. We'll have a talk, you and I. And besides that, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And I very much look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams or right here inside the videos.